Get ready to drop the puck, take a free throw, and step up to the plate. It's time for the Metro East Sports Podcast on lineupmedia.fm.
From the Lineup Media Studios, welcome to the Metro East Sports Podcast, season number 2, show number 27, recorded Monday, August 9th, 2021. Thanks, as always, to partners Cassens, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram, Callaway Home Loans, Keller Williams Marquee, Jeb and Ginger Blasting Game, and, of course, Integrity Spine and Joint Center. We're talking all things sports in the Metro East. I'm Dave Leip. I'm one of the guys in the orange shirt. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm the guy pointing, not the other guy in the orange shirt. As always, the guests make the show, and I've got Mark Heiderscheid here, guest number 1, getting ready to start here for a second. Head boys soccer coach at Edwardsville High School, 2-time state champion. High school boys soccer coach at Edwardsville High School. Guest number 2 coming up in about half an hour here, Doug Stotler, the athletic director and men's basketball coach. Very successful guy at Lewis and Clark Community College. And guests number 3 and 4 coming in together, Lauren Taplin and Taryn Brown, a couple of girls who starred in softball at Edwardsville High School. And one girl did some things in the Cape Cod League this summer, I believe, and one girl is still playing college softball, and Taryn Brown. 3 things you can do to help this podcast. Number 1, you can subscribe. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe on YouTube now. If you're watching, please subscribe on YouTube. We probably have 5 YouTube followers right now, Mark. These are the early days for us in the YouTube. We're brand new to that, and people are telling me I've got a face for podcasts without the YouTube. So should I be offended by that?
No.
Number 2, follow us on all of our social. Thank you for being kind there. Follow us on all of our social media platforms on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and probably you're seeing that on the scroll. All the great places where you can see us. And if you have a story idea, email me at mespdave@gmail.com. And we've got a new feature, Integrity Spine and Joint Center Team of the Month, Coach Heiderscheid. Could be women's bowling, could be high school boys soccer, could be high school lacrosse, could be little league softball, could be your trap team. Who knows? Could be anybody. If you want to nominate a team for Team of the Month, could be incredible improvement, sportsmanship, could be success. If you want to nominate a team, reach out to me at mespdave@gmail.com, and please put in the subject line, Team of the Month. All right, awesome. Coach Heiderscheid, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for having me.
Just completed season number 22. Did I have that right?
Oh, man.
Or was it 21?
It's either 21 or 22. It gets to be that long, then I don't know for sure. I know I started in 2000, so as a accounting teacher, I should be able to do the math like that. But
they all start blending together after a while,
yes.
Don't they? I think you and I started at the exact same time, though, didn't we?
Might have, because I was an assistant. You would have started in the 90s.
I started in 94.
I was a little bit earlier as an assistant coach, because I would have started in 91. Okay. That dates me, and that's unfortunate.
You started in 91?
Yes.
Okay, so you have been there.
I've been a long time.
You have been there longer.
Yes, so that'd be 9 years as an assistant, and then since 2000, the varsity coach.
Wow. During that time, 330 wins, 2 state championships, 14 Southwestern Conference championships, 16 regional championships. Did you play a regional championship last spring?
We did not play a regional last spring.
Okay, so you're stuck at 15 for the time being. 9 sectional championships and 8 state tournament appearances. Had a ton of success at Edwardsville High School. To what do you owe all that success?
Without a doubt, there has to be a lot of dedication from all levels. You know that. I mean, for what you've been able to do with the tennis. And then you look at programs at Edwardsville, and you think about who's been there both as athletes and then also for leadership. We've really had everything there, and that's made it so much. You know, I even make a shout-out for Dr. Ed Hightower, because he certainly went out, sought out, made very good hires, and then people also wanted to come to Edwardsville High School to play athletics, and so I think it makes a big difference. And so, you know, I think as players, you know that success, it's difficult to duplicate every single year, but at the same time, if you have program and you continue to try and do the right things, I think it's a thing that you try and continue. And so the last full season we had it, I was fortunate enough to have my own son, play for me. And I think that even gave me more impetus, more thought to try and do well. And we took third because Jack had been there during the 2008, 9, 10 when we made it to the semifinals each one of those years, but he was quite little. And then he saw it when we won in 13. And so I think it was very important for him, that all of a sudden he got to go up there to the semifinals. And if anything, I'll be honest, it was a bit of a relief for that, just because it was neat to experience. For me, after a while, it's a thing that it's not to aspire for win 331. It's not for me to aspire to think, well, there's that next trophy sitting there, but it's really that those players can say that they earned that trophy. And I think that's huge. I think that's just so important because, and moments you and I know that there's also a thing that sometimes some neighboring schools have to come to grips with Edwardsville. And I was like, well, you understand that, but every single year is a brand new group of players. And every single year you owe it to them. It's not just because, Edwardsville did well in a previous year. It's, this is a brand new group, and what can you do to make it exciting for them? So
the expectations are there.
Expectations are very there, but I think you temper it in that I think you do the best of your ability. And I think that once you've, been there like you have, like John Wagner and that, then I think you still have high aspirations to make it the best thing ever for those kids, but you don't have maybe that same sort of pressure that, say, you would have had as a new coach, thinking that, I don't really have a legacy to fall back on.
Are you a calm guy? I would describe you as a calm, even-keeled guy, positive.
I'm definitely not bipolar, but without a doubt that it switches on and off. I prefer to be calm. I know when we won it in 13, it was a case that I really felt like our players really dealt with pressure better than the other semifinalists. I thought both teams really struggled with the moment. And I thought our players, it was like, we're here. We're going to just try the best that we can and see what happens. And I think it was very important. It took a lot of that off of them. And I think maybe for perhaps, how I, keep sometimes the blood pressure down. I think that can be very important for the kids, for the players, especially in a sport like soccer. That said, without a doubt, there are moments where the kids will know that certainly I'll get animated. I think that's just going to happen. And sometimes you want to go ahead and get a spark from players, and sometimes it's like, I probably shouldn't have done that. But I think mostly the preference is to be that way because you represent the kids also. You're high school. Been the coordinator for the Coaches Association for a long time. People in Chicago know me, and so therefore you, I think, really have a reputation is not the right word.
An obligation to set the right kind of example?
It is. It really is. And, I know my dad he's passed away for several years, but I know with him, he sounded like Dennis Hopper from Hoosiers. It's like, there's my son, he's this. But he would talk to me, and he was a guy that was kind of typical for that generation of people that lived after the Depression and whatnot, and grew up in small town and that. And so for him, it was like respect meant everything. It was more powerful than money, more powerful than success. It's like how you could hold yourself, was such a big thing. And so for him, he was like, Mark says, just make sure, because it's almost impossible to get that back if you do anything to lose respect. And so I was at an age where I was getting much more mature, veteran, we'll say. And so listening to that, where he's kind of on his deathbed, I think it really kind of it struck a chord, and it's something that I think you kind of have to live by in the remaining years that I
He
had.
told you that on his deathbed.
Pretty close, because he was over at Alton in way beyond assisted living, and so his mental capacity was right there, but he was like weeks away from passing, and he was definitely at a point where he couldn't really hardly get up out of a wheelchair or anything like that, because his body had completely broken down. But the neat part is that I could talk to him and hold a great conversation. On occasion, he'd fall back, but I think that made it so neat, because then you knew that time was so valuable, so important, to be there in that moment.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Bethalto. So, for me, all this is a little different. I mean, Bethalto is a neat place. But
I think Bethalto has really had some strong soccer the last couple of years.
They have. They've got a new young guy. Really like him. He reaches out to me at times, and so I do whatever I can, and talk to him and that, because I want them to be very successful. But then a lot of them, the Jabot coach reaches out to me. He just had a question a year and a half ago about something, and so I lended my advice and that, because again, I totally respect him and for what he does for the Jabot program, and I always want people like that to do well. I know you're a Granite City one. I'm very friendly with Ryan from Granite City, and so anytime he'd reach with me, same thing. And conference rivals, it's like O'Fallon would do my best to help them. Alton's got a new coach, do the same for them. But yeah, Bethalto, I think, they've done so much better here recently, and they've been a program where it's small. So in moments it's going to be difficult, because it's a smaller school and don't have numbers. Then all of a sudden you get the right group of kids, and you know how that kind of goes in any sport like basketball to whatever, but team sports especially. It's hard to sustain things, and but yeah, he's done a good job. Go ahead.
So you've kind of become the dean of local soccer college coaches, or one of them. Who's been coaching high school soccer college? I mean, who's been coaching high school soccer longer than you in the 618?
Nobody in the 618. It's not even close. The only one that would even came close as far as varsity level was that Jason Turkington from O'Fallon had started coaching in 2001 and was the varsity coach at 2001. I don't think Jason had assisted. If it was a short duration, because I remember him as a player, and really liked Jason. But this year now he's went ahead and is going to continue teaching, but not coaching. And he was one of the more veteran ones. I think the other one that would have been able to come close, but not as much as me, was Jason Mathenia, who had been at West in the 90s, very late 90s. And then he didn't coach for a little bit, did some on the girls' side as well. And then he coached at Columbia and had amazing success over at Columbia. And then now he's so he could spend time watching his child play soccer. He didn't want to, high school. And so he wanted to go ahead and step away from the coaching aspect of it. And so, it's amazing how many are just a short amount of years in that. And so, yeah.
It's tough to last this long. How have you been able to survive all these years? How have you kept your passion for coaching alive throughout these decades?
I think that some probably has to be perspective. I think that it's not to say that you have to kind of go Mr. Miyagi and say that you have balance, but without a doubt, I think people like you and I that have done it for so long, I think you have to have passion that you have for tennis. I think, like for myself, it's going to be passion for the sport itself. I mean, I love watching the Premier League. I'll sit down, Jack will sit there and it's like, hey, let's watch Chelsea. I'm like, hey, I don't have time. But no, but it's like usually it's like, I'll sit down because it's fun. I think you have to absolute passion for kids. And I think what's made it maybe better for me, and they're like, yeah, well, Coach Yvonne, it's like, well, it wouldn't have had to be that. Honestly, I think if you're progressing kids, and if at the end of the year they're having fun, like every summer, it's a bummer because it's like, we don't get to go ahead and just run around the soccer field for summer scrimmages and just simply have fun. Kids come back and it's like, can I play? It's like, no, because they're in college now. So, but it's I think that is huge. And I think also that if you keep kids first and have a passion for them, want them to be successful, then I think it really takes the edge and the pressure off because so many really have a struggle between what they have as difficulty. It could be dealing with the emotions in terms of parents, players, and that. And I think that I hopefully kind of wear my emotions in my sleeve and say, to them just how much I do care about them. And I think given the fact that I want the kids themselves to be the ones that have fun, I think that makes a difference for me. That I never feel like it has to be on win number 331. It's more just always about, hey, how are the kids doing? How are the kids, progressing? And I never worry too much about the other ones' accolades. I know some people up north are like, hey, Mark, you got to put in some paperwork or some stuff. I'm like,
I don't
want to.
I skip that all the time.
They're like, well, they made me. And the reason why they made me do for whatever it is that I was forced to do the other time was they wanted me to get something while they were still there. And I was like, okay, fine. Then I'll do it, because the guys up in Chicago are my very good friends, from Naperville to whatever else. And so I thought, they're older than me. And so they're like, look, we're only going to be around for so much more. And I thought, okay, fine. I won't be selfish, and I'll put in paperwork for something. And but really, I think for me, it's like I'd just rather shun anything like that and just say, let's make it always about the kids. And I think that helps the longevity part.
I think it keeps you happy.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're worried about this award or that win or loss, I think keeping individual wins and losses in perspective is one of the keys to longevity.
I think so.
Because the losses can hurt so much that they can drive you out.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I would be after games, and, I've had ones because they'll see me look in their eyes, the other coaches, and they're like, Mark, stop, and that. And I know when we beat Moline in the game to get to the semifinal. Rick Sanchez had been a longtime friend of mine for years. And Rick had never made it to a semi, I'm pretty positive. And so as soon as we had won, I wanted to win so badly, and Brendan Weller scored a great goal with dying seconds. And so the kids are just absolutely excited. I mean, it was just the most exciting win. And all of a sudden I'm looking at Rick, and my heart just sinks, because I also have, the deepest respect again for him. And he's very endearing to me, and so I'm over there trying to talk to him and hugging him and that sort of thing. It's pre-COVID, so it's all good. And and I think that kind of keeps the perspective too. When you're, like you're saying, it's like at this point, I try to do what I can to help so many others, and I think that's good. Same time, game's on. Want the kids to be successful.
I'm going to ask you a question in
Sure.
a second, but first I got to talk about my friends at Cassens Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram, the number one place to purchase a vehicle in the Metro East. If you're in the market for a new or pre-owned car, check out Cassens inventory in person, where they've been for 25 years, or online at cassens.com. Cassens has earned the highest ratings for customer service. Their expert staff is committed to making your car buying experience enjoyable, including convenient on-site financing. I've purchased 4 vehicles there. My daughter drives an IU Red Jeep Cherokee, and my wife and I are on our second Jeep Grand Cherokee. With over 80 years of experience in the Metro East, Cassens is the clear-cut leader for quality, service, and customer satisfaction. Go see Steve, Cliff, Holly, Greg, Bob, Mike, Tony, or Trent today. How about that? All right. Here's my question for you. You're about to have your first practice of the year.
Yes.
In just about an hour and 10 minutes.
Yes.
What are you going to say to these guys? When you first take the field, what's going to be your message before you ever drop a ball, before you ever run a drill? You're going to talk to these kids for a minute, I'm going to assume. Or will you not talk to them? Will you just drop the ball and be like, okay?
No, there'll be conversation. And I think this one, it's a tougher conversation, because most times we know what the goals tend to be. And it's always a different group. But it's always play the best of our ability. Let things like conference and that play out. Yes, we'd like to win it again, but if it happens, it happens. That's that. We'd always like to be a very good team at the end of the year, be better than what we started. And so that gives us a good position for playoffs. But with soccer, we know a ball bounce here and there. And, so many times you'll outshoot a team 20-1 and you'll lose. And so those things happen, but you still try and put yourself in the best position possible. But I think, to be honest on this one, I think the message that we're coming out of a COVID thing last year, it just felt right to keep every individual that we had. And I know this year, come clean, that we're looking almost like at 90 kids coming out. And so that kind of puts it in a bind. And so, once again, I'll be telling them that, on one, I'll be like, hey, guys, this is a great thing. We have so many kids that are passionate about the sport. I'm super excited. They know we've got great goalkeeping. We've got, as far as field players, it's really covered. The depth is great. The character on this team is outstanding. I've been watching them all summer long. Camaraderie is very good. I think it could be a outstanding year. And so all those points, yes, are made, and those are the positives. But like when you have talks with players where you sandwich things, here's positive, sneak in the negative, and then wrap it up with a positive again to make sure we have that, then it becomes an honesty thing. I think that's one of the tough areas as a team coach, whether you happen to be Dustin Battis, who you mentioned, whether it happens to be Tim Funkhauser. I think guys like that where you've got to put these people out there in those positions, and then you'd have a substitution rotation you put out there. But then there's also roster limitations set by the IHSA. And we are so heavy with players that then it becomes a conversation where soccer is not unlike football, where football will have a scout team, and they kind of know the role. And it's unfortunate that maybe Rudy has to look at the list each week. But at the same time, he kind of sort of got it. But I think here it's a case where I'll keep more players than what is advisable and probably what's even allowable by IHSA, but best assessor didn't have to know this. And then, but at the end of the year, at some point, I have to designate those players as they'll be on that back end of the list, but not on the roster to go.
So you can only have certain number of guys, 25 on your official roster, but you
for the IHSA tournament.
Okay, but you can have more kids than that in your program.
Varsity, yes, and JV and freshman, it's whatever you can uniform. And so most squads around here won't keep 25. It's not going to happen. They won't have the numbers nor they want to because it's inconceivable to play that many players. But I'll be over by several and talk to the kids. Here's a rotation. Here's how we'll try things. And it only matters, at the end of the year. And sometimes, nobody even knows the difference. But I'll still, I think it's incumbent upon me at this point. I'll have to have that little conversation. Guys, here is exactly where the numbers flow. I know how people are, and that's that. And then when it comes to that lower level, we're looking at a case where I'll have probably, 40 or so players that aren't varsity that are all of a sudden trying to get on a JV roster while you can't roster 40 athletes at that point, and that's including 0 freshmen. And there'll be quite a few. So I think last year was kind of a honeymoon sort of period because kids just got to play. We just threw the ball out there. It was just, whatever happened. That was that. It was a COVID year. And we're just happy to go out there in the springtime and get just a handful of games and hope that the kids figured out how to play the game after not really playing anything for a year and a half. So, but now
this year it's a different story.
This year it's a different story. All of a sudden it's like, well, what's the real season? You have that. Numbers are really large, which is, again, it's a good and a bad. So very good in some ways, but at the same time, it means that conversation. But I think if you can have that very honest, I've been pretty lucky recently where most players, they're just like, just tell me, coach. I'm like, here's what it is. And then just have that. And I said, look, here's what I'm going to do for you. Here's how we're going to go ahead and approach this. We'll see. But then at the same time, tell them, look, you can't all of a sudden just happen to make somebody into Roger Federer. You can't make somebody, into the next Monica Seles. You can help them along that way, but it's just not by a snap. I mean, some people are just very athletic. They've got the passion. They move. And so, some of that is what it is, but you can certainly make players better along the way. But at moments, it's like, look, these are top players, and these are some people in the middle, and that's it's just
during
not
a
how it falls
3-month
out.
season, you can't take
No.
a kid from point A to point Z. But
No.
I don't know how far you'll take each kid, but I do know this. At the end of the season, you're going to be right there among the elite teams in the area because you are every year. You may not be the best. You may not win the conference, but even if you don't win the conference, you're going to be a factor in the conference championship. And you'll be right there at the end. Thanks so much for coming by tonight, Coach.
You're very
Give
welcome.
me one of these right here. Another great season, and we'll talk to you at the end after you win state again.
We'll try.
Mark Heiderscheid, thanks for coming by.